It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
So you may remember a couple weeks ago, the NTSB held a hearing in East Palestine, Ohio, on the railroad disaster there. And one of the things that came out of it was just how much power the rail industry, wields over local governments. That the fire chief was given like 13 minutes to make a decision of really a huge consequence. And you can argue that, look, this is a small town fire chief. Probably, look, I don't know the guy, but probably doesn't have the level of expertise that would help someone make that decision that quickly. And they pushed him into it, and they used him. So they go, well, the fire chief decided to do it. That's how this game works. And I'm glad they brought that up, and I'm glad it became public. And I hope the NTSB comes out with their final report and puts blame where it belongs. But I want to talk a little bit more about that hearing. That's why I've asked John Russell to come talk with us. John is the owner and editor of the Holler newsletter. You can find that at theholler.co. We'll get links out on social media. I can take a look at that. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks, Rick. Good to be on the show again.
So tell me about this. You were at the hearing. Tell me, what did you see? For me, the big bit was that fire chief. What caught your attention?
Yeah, what caught my attention was a chart, and this was a chart about temperature on one of the cars that Norfolk Southern was looking at. And just to rewind, when you go back to East Palestine, we all remember the mushroom cloud, but at the time we were being told that we have got to blow up these cars of chemicals before they react, they heat up, and they blow themselves up. That's what we were told. That was why the rush happened. And that was, their justification. Now, they ultimately ended up blowing up 5 cars of vinyl chloride, which, by the way, is close to 1 million pounds of this stuff. It causes cancer. We all know what happened when we set it on fire. Now, they said that one car was heating up, right? What we found out at this hearing was a temperature chart that showed this one concerning car. Not only was it not heating up, it had stabilized. It had been cooling down for more than 12 hours leading up to when they blew it up, and was stable at the time that they blew it up. And Norfolk Southern knew about that data. It wasn't close to the threshold of where a runaway reaction could happen. It was, heated, but we later found out not close to a point of a runaway reaction. So to me, that was the big data point. And that, raises the question also, this was just the one concerning car, right? So they added 4 more cars that, because of this temperature data, we now know were never a concern. They were not heating up. They were not polymerizing. Yet at the last moment before these cars were blown up, they added 700,000 more pounds of vinyl chloride to the equation without reconsidering the evacuation zone, and they knew that the cars were cooling off.
The other part that caught my attention on this is evidently the company that produced this product was saying, no, you've got this wrong. That's not how this product reacts. That there was another part of this that was never even considered, as I understand, and you correct me if I'm wrong, and that was never presented to this fire chief.
That's right. I mean, you see this multi-billion-dollar company taking the fire chief. I mean, the fire chief was making the point that most of his guys are volunteer. Everybody else is working, separate jobs here. The mayor of the town has a job at the Stone Corps. I mean, this is a sleepy rural town, and here's a multi-billion-dollar corporation saying, "Oh, the fire chief, train crashes in his town. You got 13 minutes. It's him that made the decision to blow up nearly 1 million pounds of a toxic chemical." It just doesn't pass the smell test. But then you start to put together the testimony from other experts. And I'm thinking of Randy Padfield here. This is a 9/11 first responder, in the Pennsylvania Department of Emergency Management. A lot of credibility. The governor of Pennsylvania, all saying that Norfolk Southern, from the time they arrived on the scene, was acting alone mostly, was kind of cornered off and was coming up with their own plans, was not clear about communication to the rest of Unified Command, and at the last moment was presenting the only option they said that was on the table and forcing everybody to go with it. That's the window into this decision making that we learned about through these NTSB hearings. And in that decision making, we found out the company that owned the chemicals, who could have told Norfolk Southern that they were nowhere close to runaway polymerization, the whole reason these things had to be blown up, they weren't even included and didn't share that information because of the unilateral decision-making by Norfolk Southern.
And their 200 years of experience. I remember that being their talking point.
Oh, yeah.
We got over 200 years of experience in making bad decisions. So what does this mean for the town of East Palestine? Because look, as you pointed out, they blew up, they burned 1 million pounds of this stuff into their air, into their homes, into the ground, into the water supply. All of this. What's it going to mean for these people? Today, 5 years, 10 years from now, do we have any idea?
That's the most tragic part about it. I think we're going to find out over the course of years. And unfortunately, you can stack these disasters up right next to each other. 2 hours down the river is the DuPont plant, where, a much larger scale disaster was put on to the public there by a company that knew a lot more than they let on. And everybody in the region ends up kind of being a guinea pig to see what happens over 20 years. And unfortunately, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube or the vinyl chloride back in the rail car. And we're going to find out what happens. And it's going to take a long time to do that.
Now, what can the NTSB do after this hearing? I know they had a very public display. And let me ask you that, how normal is that? How prevalent is having this kind of a public display, this kind of a public hearing in a community? Is this for the NTSB? I can't remember them doing this before, but is this something normal?
Yeah, I'm no expert on the NTSB, but I agree with that. I think this is a rare occasion to see kind of the full power of government. We're talking federal government, bigwigs here, moved to the town of East Palestine to make these hearings public and keep this in the news. And I think, that's a good thing. It's this disaster, if any positive can come from it, it's that we use it as a window into how business is done by the largest companies in America. You mentioned the 200 years of experience line that Norfolk Southern used to put pressure on people to go with their plan. It sounds an awful lot like Wall Street banks back in 2008 saying, hey, the nice economy you have here, it'd be a shame if your own lack of expertise messed it all up. Why don't you leave it to us to regulate? Well, we know how that turned out.
So let me ask you this, because I've got my thoughts, and I've had guests on who have given their thoughts. Why'd they blow it? I mean, if it didn't need to be done, if it wasn't heating up, if it wasn't a risk, why do this? Why create that image? Why burn this stuff in this community?
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody truly does know that, but Norfolk Southern. But we can, as ordinary observers, we can put together what we know to be true. Now we know that they had data that showed that this car was not cooling off at the same time that they were rushing to blow it up for the possibility that it was heating up. They knew that it wasn't. Well, this is the same company that immediately laid new tracks over this disaster site and ran trains through the ground zero 3 minutes after the evacuation order lifted. Okay, they're clearly in a rush to keep this main line, this thoroughfare, this choke point of the rails open. Time is money. These companies are, pushing for precision scheduled railroad and whittling down seconds of every process. They've demonstrated that they're concerned to get this rail line open. And I think when you stack that up against other behavior, it begs the question, were you trying to blow these up to get it out of the way quick under the guise that these chemicals were going to blow up if you didn't do it first? We now know that that wasn't going to happen, but why did they do it? I think we're owed that answer.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with John Russell. John's the owner and editor of The Holler newsletter. You can find that at theholler.co. We'll get links out in social media. The Holler, class politics for rednecks and hippies. Theholler.co, the website. But what do you say to the argument? And I had someone email me this the night I talked about it. What do you say about this? They just made an honest mistake. They thought they were doing the right thing. The benefit of the doubt. Hey, the disaster would have been so much worse had we not blown it up. This was the least deadly of options. What do you say to that argument?
I raise a lot of missteps that they had in considering alternatives. I mean, derailments are happening all of the time. What makes this one unique over every other derailment involving a hazardous chemical that there had to be a rush to judgment to immediately go with the most catastrophic option, especially now that we know that they were viewing data that said, hey, it might not be that urgent, right? First of all, the big question, remember, they blew up 5 cars. We were talking about 1 car that was concerning. All of a sudden, they add 4 cars at the end that they knew never did go through a spike in heat. What's up with that? The emergency response guidebook says whenever a vinyl chloride tanker derails and is exposed to fire, you have to have a 1-mile evacuation zone in all directions per car. There were 5 cars blowing up with a 1-mile evacuation zone. What gives with that? There are all of these details when you really look into it that appear to tell the story of a large company that was in a rush to get this railroad back up and running.
Yeah. So let me ask you, you've been to East Palestine, you've seen these people who have to live here. This is their home. What's the sense? What's the feel on the ground with people? What's the sense of what the future is going to be there?
There's a lot of people in town. People are really proud of these, small towns that kind of stay out of the news. They like it that way. They want it to be that way. A lot of people are hoping that this town can return to normal. And the tragedy of that is that it's going to be really hard because of a thing that's not in their control. I think there's a big feeling of, this was put upon us by people that we don't really know how to hold accountable, because all of the other examples for industrial tragedies, the most you can expect for accountability is a fine on these companies that's just a cost of doing business. Yeah. These are multi-billion-dollar companies that are critical to the economy running on time. Even the largest price tag is going to be hard. So I think there's a lot of frustration at that. There's, sadness of, a kind of idyllic community that lost some of that because of something out of their hands. And I think a lot of people are hoping that this doesn't just turn out like another time when opioid companies, kill off 500,000 Americans and don't go to jail, or DuPont poisons the water around here and nobody there goes to jail. I think people are tired of corporate malpractice without consequences that you would face if you lit 800,000 pounds of vinyl chloride on fire in a pit in your backyard, because there'd be consequences. If
absolutely. So this hasn't even been discussed at any point. You don't think anyone's going to go to jail over this, do you?
If I were a betting man, I would say no. It rarely happens in America. But I think something to watch there that's interesting is the movements of Josh Shapiro. Their administration has certainly raised or hinted at, criminal liability on behalf of this company, especially now that with the data that we know. So that'll be a thing I'm watching.
I sure hope so. Last question I've got for you. This happened, February?
Yep.
We're here. What is it
February
now? July. Governor of Ohio just getting around to doing his job.
Yeah. So the demand from residents has been declare this, a federal emergency zone to get FEMA involved, open up resources, and do right by the people here to clean up this town and to test it and to really know what's happening. The fact that it's this late, it's like you said, do your job the first time, do it right, and not months and months after.
Yeah.
This company pushes you around.
Seems a little complicit. I mean, to let this much time pass before finally doing what you probably should have done right from day one. Just my thought.
Yep, I would agree with you there.
But John, I appreciate you taking some time for us. I'm sure this is not going to go away anytime soon. Love you have you come back and keep us up to date.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate being on the show.
Appreciate the time. John Russell. He's the owner and editor of the Holler newsletter. You're going to want to take a look at this. Class Politics for Rednecks and Hippies. theholler.co, the website. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. The new CHIPS bill that got passed will bring jobs back home and has already resulted in big announcements of major new factories opening. The American Recovery Package has allowed cities and counties to hire new police officers and firefighters and start rebuilding their communities again. We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice.
The good news is America is coming back. More jobs, more building, more of what makes our country great. And more cities and towns, more small businesses and big corporations are choosing the highly skilled, highly trained members of the IBEW to do the work. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers is committed to doing the job right, on time, and safely. America is making a big comeback, and the IBEW is proud to do our part.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Stop and think about this for a second. The Ohio governor just now, DeWine, declares a state of emergency to let the federal government in. Now, remember, if you will, walk back with me, come back with me in the Wayback Machine, how conservatives made a huge big deal out of, Joe Biden hasn't gone there and the federal government hasn't done anything. One of two things. One, and I don't know which is worse, to be honest. One, the elected officials who were doing this, the Marjorie Three Names and that ilk, are stupid and don't understand how government works. Or there's the other one. They're just lying to you. They know what reality is, but they want you angry. But either way, still bad. Still not something you would expect to get from federal officials. Because look, we have states' rights. The federal government can't just come marching in. And I said at the time, if I were Joe Biden, I would have lined FEMA up at the Pennsylvania border. There would have been trucks waiting. There would have been all kind of resources there. Yes, you probably would have wasted a little bit of money and you'd taken a beating for that. But I would have lined people up. I would have media out there saying we're ready to go in as soon as the governor of Ohio gives us the go. We're here. We're ready with resources, and we're going to help put up military tents for families to get refuge and all kinds of stuff. I would have had it all. Because I understand what the image is. The image of not doing anything, which is what happened to Biden and Buttigieg, is horrible. And Republicans know that, and they know that they can go to their minions and go, see, the Democrats don't care. No, it's just that Mike DeWine didn't do his job. Had he declared a federal emergency, the federal government would have come in and taken over. They would have sent everybody. It would have been, like any disaster. We've got teams that do this stuff. DeWine didn't do it. And the question is why? Again, why? Why wouldn't he do this? Because the rail companies didn't want him to. Because as soon as that happens and all the federal resources come in and all the federal egos come in, they can no longer strong arm a small town fire chief. They can no longer strong arm a small town mayor and, hey, we'll give you $5,000 if you just sign this waiver that you won't sue us. It's quite remarkable what these big companies get away with, and we allow it. So the question keeps coming back to, when do we say enough is enough? When do we say we're going to take these big behemoths on and hold them accountable? And look, as John said a moment ago, the reality is the rail industry is an integral part of our transportation network. It has been important in alleviating our supply chain issues. If that line is down, things are backing up, and understand that's the reality of the world we live in. So don't be surprised when this stuff happens. Time is money. Time is profit. So am I shocked that they strong-armed a small-town fire chief into this? No, of course not. Question is, how many times have they gotten away with it? Nobody was paying attention. How many times have they done this and there was no public hearing? Because I'll tell you, I don't remember the last time the NTSB held a public hearing like this. I'm sure it was the last massive disaster. How long will it take us to say no more? Because that could have been any small town. I mean, we've got rail tracks, where major trains go through a mile from our house. It could happen just about anywhere. And the fact that we haven't held them accountable for this precision scheduled railroading and the things that they do around, hey, we're just squeezing profits. We're just squeezing the quarter till the eagle screams. It's capitalism. It's how it's supposed to be. More for us, less for you. So when disaster happens, well, we're just going to externalize that risk. Knowing that they can tie this stuff up for decades. Knowing that they've got the legal ability to basically bankrupt this little town. Especially when you got a governor like DeWine who doesn't seem to be doing much. Now, had this happened on the other side of the border in Pennsylvania, I guarantee you Shapiro would be up and down them. Because look, I think Shapiro's got presidential aspirations. He gets the messaging. He gets what this could be politically. But he also gets the fact that, you know what? You got to do right. You got to do the right thing. Blowing up 5 of these cars when you could only really justify one. And even then, your justification for that one is really flimsy. The only logical solution, and look, I'm not the brightest guy on the panel here, but the fact that you want to get those tracks open, you want to clear the route. I'm surprised they didn't just dump it, which is what they had done probably 50 years ago. Just dump it in the field somewhere. So what if the cows have 6 legs? So what if, the turkeys come out with, with 6 legs? Be a John Madden turkey. Congratulations. We've just made a live John Madden turkey. Yeah, lots to do. Want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend J.D. Schulten, Iowa State Representative, is going to be here to talk about child labor laws and maybe what Iowa's not doing right. Back after this. Stick around.
The best way to strengthen America's economy? How about investing in America's fastest growing industry? Clean energy. It means millions of jobs that pay well and can't be outsourced. And lower utility costs for families. Congress, let's get it done.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And the Teamsters pushed a law so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind. The union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right, left, or red, blue, when they are and always have been up, down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.